streaming, we've reached a year earlier this month.
Wow,
We've
cool. Oh,
we've
that's why it
done
says affiliate anniversary here.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. We've been doing this for a little while.
Yeah.
Dave did step away real quick to take care of some stuff.
Not a problem. We are live, so
Yeah,
go ahead and can
yeah. I'll take
continue. All right.
I'll take us out. So, thank you guys for welcoming us. Thank you guys for welcoming. Thank you guys for joining us today, this Friday afternoon. I'm Rob, the host of the Update Log. With me are Greg and Matt. We have two very, very special guests. We have Magnus Setter and Dave Brasgalla, who's currently AFK. He had to step away for a minute. But Magnus is the writer of the Dragon's Bane bestiary. Dave is one of the artists on the same work, and that is coming out of Free League Press, which we've showcased here on the Update Log before. These two gentlemen are joining us today to talk about themselves, the work they've done over the years, which has been quite prolific. You'll probably recognize a few of the titles that they've worked on, and what they're working on now. Obviously the Dragon's Bane bestiary that they've worked on previously, and maybe even some sneak peeks and some hints at what they're working on in the future. But yeah, this episode is entirely about them, and just paying homage to the guys that came before us, and the guys still doing it, because it's a great thing. I mean, obviously, if you haven't figured out that we love games and creating them, and the people that create them. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, let me stop yammering on. And Magnus, how about we start with you? How about you introduce yourself to the audience and kind of tell them who you are? Give a brief history on how you kind of got started in the industry, and we'll go from there. And then Dave, it's your turn. Then you'll be in the hot seat.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me here.
Yep.
It's going to be a lot of fun talking about myself. No, talking about Dragonbane and the bestiary, and meeting Dave for the first time. Actually, even though we live in the same city, we've never crossed paths before. My name is Magnus Seter. I'm a game writer, and I've been playing role-playing games since 1982. I started with what is now known as Dragonbane, and played a lot of games of different genres. We started with Dragonbane, which is sort of like the fantasy version of Dungeons & Dragons in Sweden. Not rules-wise, but Dragonbane occupies the position of Dungeons & Dragons in Sweden. So Dragonbane is actually the dominant fantasy game in Sweden. It's the strongest brand. It's the strongest role-playing game. It is synonymous with role-playing games. It's like I said, I've said it other interviews I've been to, that in Sweden sometimes when people translate American movies or books, and they say they played Dungeons and Dragons in Sweden, they will translate that to they played Drakar och Demoner, which is Dragonbane. So it occupies a very special position, which is, I think, one of the most interesting things about Dragonbane. There are so many Americans that think that Dungeons and Dragons is the best, biggest game ever because it is Dungeons and Dragons. The rules are perfect and everything like that. And in Sweden, Dungeons and Dragons isn't the dominant game. It's Drakar och Demoner. It's Dragonbane. So it's a different tradition. It's a different kind of game. I've played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons as well. We moved on from Dragonbane to Dungeons and Dragons. Then we played a lot of Call of Cthulhu. I played a lot of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and then I played a lot of Cyberpunk. I loved Cyberpunk and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay so much that I wrote sort of like unofficial rules editions to them, and I wrote a lot of con adventures for Cyberpunk. And I figured that since I was already writing these things for other people, I might as well send them to the publishers. So I started sending out my scenarios to different publishers, and Telsori and picked up some of my rules editions for Cyberpunk that was incorporated into Cyberpunk 2020, and then I got to write two adventures for their Eurotour book, together with prolific Russian expert or Russia expert Mark Galeotti, who's in the news always nowadays, delivering his astute analysis of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is kind of strange that my first editor is one of the world's best experts on Russia now. It's kind of fun. And then after the Cyberpunk thing, I started pestering Target Games that was publishing Dragonbane at the time and their own Cyberpunk version of a game called Mutant, which is now known as Mutant Year Zero. So I got to work for them, and then I wrote for Mutant, for Dragonbane, and for Cult. And then I wrote the Mutant Chronicles RPG, and lately I've been working on with Free League on the Forbidden Lands. I wrote the Bitter Reach.
I just needed you to know.
Did work on
I
the
love
Outdoor book for Cubicle 7. And now I've been one of the writers. It's important to me that to note that I am one of the writers of the monster book, the bestiary for Dragonbane. We can get more into that later, but I didn't do it myself. It is, as everything in role-playing games is a group activity. It's very seldom, unless you self-publish, it's very seldom that you get to do something just by yourself. We have a few writers in Sweden that have that status. I'm not one of them. So when I do something with the Free League or any other publisher, it's sort of like it is as a part of a group would create something together. It's not my work; it's the group's work. It's important for me to stress that, especially if someone is thinking, well, I want to write stuff like Magnus. Good. It's a lot of fun, but be prepared to work with other people. It's not something that where I push my vision of stuff to Free League and they say, whoa, wow, this is brilliant, let's publish it. It's more like they say, well, we need help doing this. Okay, I'll do this, and then they develop what I've done into the product that you guys are picking up at the store. So Mattias Jonsson Hake, Thomas Herenstam, and Andreas Marklund also worked a lot with the writing for the monster book.
Oh yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You know, any department, you know, within game development, you know, from writing to art to, you know, programming, whatever. It's several people working on it, and it's all working towards a unified vision. So it's not any one person's vision. We're all adding a piece to that. But yeah, thank you. And
Speaking
again,
of
like.
art.
Speaking of Aria, Dave Brasgalla, again, same question. You know, how did you tell us? First of all, tell us a bit about yourself and kind of how you kind of got started in the industry and what's kind of going on since then.
Well, I started when I was really young. I played Dungeons and Dragons in high school with some friends, and I liked being a dungeon master because I liked to make the maps. And
nice.
It was great. It was great fun. And we had a great system worked out because my brother had bought these chalkboards that had like wood binding and lay it out on the table, and we marked out a grid with laundry markers, and we just used chalk to draw it with the figures
cool.
on. And then you could just erase it and do another one, you know. We had a lot of fun, and we were just, you know, we weren't hard or fast on the rules. I was making up a lot of stuff, but we had a lot of fun doing it. And I was really big into Heavy Metal magazine, you know, drawing comics like Bon Baudet was a huge influence, still is really in certain aspects of how I present pictures. But, you know, soaked up Mobius and all the giants, just everybody just, you know, my parents were always talking about how I never came out of my room during that period. And I was like, well, I was busy. I had a drawing table there. I'm working.
Yeah, that's stuff to do, man.
And I went away from it for a long time because when I got into art school, I also got into a band, and then that was the end of art school. And then I was in bands for a long time on the road, doing all that. But then when I moved here to Sweden in 2000, I started to get exposed to a lot of artists that were really getting me interested in getting back. Some of them were, it's incredible. There's like 150 plus museums in Stockholm. You go in the National Gallery and it's just mind blowing. It made me want to paint and draw again, which I hadn't done for a long time. And I got influenced by Jan Bauer. I got influenced by Carl Larsson and Karin Larsson as well. And Prince Eugene, who's one of my favorites. I mean, he gave up a claim to the throne to be an artist and hang around with people like Zorn. It's like, I like this guy a lot. So,
wow, that's
all
impressive.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool people. Names go out of my head exactly when I need them. But there's a female artist in Sweden that I really love, and it'll come to me. I've got this leftover thing from long COVID where the file gets retrieved about 2 minutes after I need it. It'll pop up when we've moved on to the next subject. But
all of us.
It started to coalesce. And Chef Beck, Helene Chef Beck, wonderful artist, super graphic, really, really interesting and cool artist, I thought. So there was a lot of that was sort of baked into the Swedish national cultural identity, and that pushed me back into the genre again and looking at it, starting to read about the other artists, and being exposed to people like Paul Bonner, for instance, who we were mentioning earlier, Justin Gerard, people like that, and so I decided to. They have some wonderful workshops in the States, but it's a long way to go to a week-long seminar. So I figured, how hard can it be to produce one myself? So I put on 2 workshops in Gamla Stan that were called Nordic Light, and it was really great. We brought in Jesper Ising, brought in Peter Miselja. Hope I didn't butcher his last name too much. I haven't said it for a while.
These are like all like local artists, right?
No. Americans from the Netherlands, from Denmark. Eva Wiedemann, who's German but lives in Ireland. It was really fun, and people came from all over Europe to go to it because it was too far away. So,
gotcha.
It was really amazing. It's actually where I met my wife. She came to that. Nice. But then I decided to, I'm going to break in. I'm going to try. And somebody said, well, it takes about 5 years to break in. And I'm like, really? Okay. But it did actually take just about 5 years before I caught my first break. And it was for that retro box that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And it was fun to sort of try to synthesize all of what I'd learned into some kind of style that was. I actually had this idea at one point when I was really, really studying the Larssons, and I thought, what if I could do fantasy art that kind of had this clean line Carl Larsson style and felt very Scandinavian? And mostly you find it on like cookie tins and things like that, but they're amazing artists, and that sort of led me into looking at how Arthur Rackham did stuff. I started trying to reproduce that digitally. And when I saw Johan Egerkranz's work, I really responded to it because I thought, I saw a lot of the, what I was chasing after was there, that I could learn a lot from that. And then luckily I ended up getting to work with him. So, or at least on the same projects. I mean, like we all work together, right? So,
yeah.
And he's sort of, his sort of set the foundation for the look of Dragonbane. It's very associated with it. Gotcha. So now there's several of us who don't draw exactly like that, but it's close enough that it all feels like a family together and works quite well.
I mean, and it works for the project because then everything is kind of cohesive and looking as it should.
Yeah. Although I mean, there was one thing though, like I remember from the early days that it was sort of catch as catch can. They would use any art they could get from anywhere in the early books. So to me,
Okay.
that was also kind of cool if it was a bunch of different styles, because it would
Actually,
let
that's
you
a good
go
point,
off
yeah.
in different directions.
Mhm.
I know that like these days, we want to be strong on branding,
Mm.
but I also think that there is room there to go off in different directions.
Huh.
It's
Dave,
fun.
if I can just cut in here and ask, how did you get in touch with the then publishers of Dragonbane, which was Riot Minds, best known
They
for
got in touch
the
with me.
Trudvang Chronicles? They got in touch with. Oh, okay.
They got in touch
And
with me, and it was specifically, they said, because there was a strong Nordic, Scandinavian
Yeah.
sort of folklore and mythology influence to what I was doing. I was doing a lot of pictures with Viking themes, but not like battle scenes and things like that. I was just really trying to evoke mood and place and things, and I love nature, so I was always putting a lot of that in the pictures, and I think they said that that's what they responded to.
Oh yeah, it's the earlier version of Dragonbane that Riot Minds published, that was sort of like the basis for what you Americans know as Trudvang Chronicles. Is heavy on atmosphere and Nordic atmosphere, lights, and forests, and sort of like the mythical folklore of the Nordic countries. If anyone's who's seen, well, Dave's work, of course, but Johan Egerkrans as well, but Paul Bonner, for example, is sort of
It's
like
a monster.
epitome. Yeah, it's just like looking at the things he's done for Riot Minds and Dragonbane and Trudvang Chronicles is really evocative, and that's something I'm happy to hear that they sort of like got in touch with you because they felt that same kind of energy in the pictures.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting.
I don't think it's that surprising, seeing as I was like really grooving on these artists that they were using, and it was putting me onto other artists. It all just grows out. One of my problems is that I'm inspired by somebody different every week, so I'm constantly changing my style. It's like, no, do it the way the other ones were. But yeah, I think it's still there. I think that love of nature is still really strong through the book and the atmosphere.
Yeah, for our audience, if you're obviously you're watching, there's a carousel of some of Dave's work kind of going across the screen there. So, that you get a good representation of his work, and it's honestly phenomenal. We were actually talking earlier, Magnus. You went to grab some of the older books. If you could show those off, that'd be great. Hopefully,
the first thing to Dave mentioned the retro box, which is what Riot Minds published, which was this is what Dragonbane looked like for ages and ages.
And this is back in like the 90s, right?
It's iconic.
Yeah, and it's iconic, and everyone who knows anything about fantasy books realizes that this is Elric. We didn't know that. We had no idea that this was Elric. So for us, this is Dragonbane. This is who's this white-haired guy? We don't know. This is the role-playing game book. And those of you who play Dragonbane now will sort of recognize the color scheme, because the green color scheme is so it's so associated with this game that when the Free League wanted to do a new fresh cover, they sort of went with this color scheme. So that's sort of like what we were associating with the Dragonbane game, basically. But it's and also that, so the monster book that they worked on had this cover.
Also Michael Whelan.
Also Michael Whelan.
So good.
So it's
also Elric.
Yeah, exactly. And people really loved these covers. But for the modern game that the Free League publishes, it's sort of done now, and there's so many products with these kind of covers that I think they wanted to avoid the confusion of the products. So they didn't really sort of do these kind of covers again. But it's a strong graphics has been
That's actually
very
my dog.
strong when it comes to the graphics and the pictures. Not in a sort of like Dungeons Dragons was sort of like, well, Elmore and Easley and Caldwell. Dragonbane had more clean, not clean, baby, but Dave, you know a lot more about styles than I do, but more line art.
Yeah.
Rough sketches. Nils Gulliksson, which is the master in Sweden.
Yeah, really
really
amazing
expressive stuff. More akin to Errol Otis, not in style but in energy and feeling. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be evocative.
Yeah.
And
it's pen and ink. It's black and white work,
exactly.
which I love. I love that. It's so strong.
Yeah.
But I've liked the kind of the black, again, the sketch, to kind of looking like it's somebody's journal or sketchbook that you're looking at, as opposed to like a finished piece of art. I like that style as well.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Magnus. Or Greg. Either.
The artwork for Dragonbane it's so very unique from Dungeons and Dragons. And a lot of it definitely, and honestly, a lot of the Scandinavian work has just a more natural feel to me. So I like it. I love the work. I love the artwork, and I love your work, Dave. It's fantastic stuff.
Thank you. I'm glad.
And again, this is not to take anything from the artists that do work for D&D and other pieces of work, but I will agree with Greg on that, where looking through the work for Dragon's Bane and the other art that's been introduced into kind of a lot of Free League's work with the fantasy slant, like even in Symbaroum, like it's very much as you said, natural. Whereas if I look at D&D, it looks like, the best way I can put it, again, I'm not an artist by any means. Stick figures is the best I got. But it looks, yeah, Magnus understands. It looks like a produced work, if that makes sense. Like even the art, depicting the world and the figure, it looks, I guess the best way I could put it, looks staged a little bit. Whereas stuff from Dragon's Bane looks natural. It looks, like you just kind of stepped through the page into this world and you just happen to see this character doing that thing, and I like that.
A lot of the early art for Dungeons and Dragons, so like series 1, series 2, a lot of the early art had a very wholesome feel to it. Very very natural, had that kind of sketch look to it, and not I don't want to, I'm not saying the art's bad. I think the art's awesome in D&D as well, and in the newer stuff, absolutely. It's just, what is your preference piece to it? And I definitely, for one, I like that more wholesome look to the pictures, where it has a little bit more of a, you can tell that somebody sat down and drew that. You know what I mean? I like that, and you see that a lot in the earlier editions of D&D, and it definitely seems to be very, very prevalent in, well, honestly, a lot of the work that's coming out of studios like Free League. I'll grab him back here.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a very interesting observation. When I started playing Dungeons and Dragons with the basic set, the red basic set, which
Uh-oh.
I remembered what you said about refreshing the page. So.
And we lost your sound again, Magnus.
As soon as you came back, we lost Magnus's sound. I told you, like we told you guys before the start, Streamlabs, it's finicky. Yeah,
that's a fickle thing.
Like
I'm back.
You are back.
All right, there we go.
All right, there we go.
Seems like for whatever reason, whenever Dave comes back, you lose your audio for some reason. I don't get shit. Honestly.
Dave was like, "Okay, Magnus, it's time for you to be quiet. I'm going to drop and come back now."
I have to say that there's I missed the very last thing that you said, but this is a natural break point. I can jump in. My favorite illustration playing D&D when I was a kid was a black and white one that was called Magic Mouth.
Magic
like
Mouth.
four party adventures, like going sort of down this bend in a staircase, and there's a mouth up on the wall talking, and they're all looking at it. And I love that. And that was like it to me. That was like the whole vibe was right in that picture. But there was a lot of mood, and it had a lot of things that I still try to put in my art right now. Good lighting.
Oh yeah, look at that now. That's very
yeah. That's kind of creepy. I'm not gonna lie. I don't. That's kind of creepy.
Lips are really like, ooh,
yes.
Yeah, and I wish it's. I can't remember the artist's name. James.
Is it Trampier? Is it that Dave Trampier?
Yeah, that's it.
Dave Trampier. I think he did a lot of those things.
Yeah, but it also has that mysterious passages that you can't see. Going off. It's very compelling to the psyche. They call that. I've read a breakdown of set design on the old original Star Trek show, and they called it winding ways, where there would always be a corridor that turned and went out of sight, but there was obviously something more around the corner, which is instead of just building a long hallway, which they didn't really have space to do. So it's very compelling psychologically to human beings to put that kind of thing in. I still try to put that in.
It gives you the impression that there's something more there. It's bigger than what you can see. And
you want to know what's around. You want to go around the corner, even though you think maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, it introduces an element of unknown and potentially, reward or risk, because again, you don't know what's around that bend. That's actually pretty cool.
So do you obey the warning of the magic mouth or not?
No.
Go no further. It's like, we're gonna go.
You ever play role-playing games?
Who listens to a mouse on the wall?
Exactly. Like, what do you know? You're a wall. I'm going around this corner because there's surely treasures.
I'm a level 5 magic user. I got nothing to worry about.
That's right. Like, I'm here for treasure. You just hang around. I'm good.
Yeah. Just to cut in here is just as an example of the type of illustration that was really fundamental for the earlier Dragonbane illustrations. I have a classic orc illustration from the first monster book. The cover is by Rovina. It's sort of like a standard fancy cover. But then we had those of you who have the Dragonbane bestiary, which is from Free League, will notice that is an homage to this picture. But still, the classic orc stuff is like, this is what it looked like. Let's see if I can get you like that.
That's a proper orc, damn it.
Yeah,
that's a real orc.
And
not the D&D stuff that we're seeing. No, exactly. That's a real orc.
And it's sort of visceral, and it's sort of like has an energy and a sort of power to it that is something that the more polished stuff today is sort of lacking.
Yes, I agree.
I completely agree. Like that's that's an orc. Again, not to throw shade at the artists and work that people do, but that, I'm sorry, when I see an orc, I don't want to see someone. I don't want to see sunshine and rainbows. I want to see that. I want to see something that's gonna be like, hold on, I got to kill this thing. Because it's intimidating and it's supposed to be.
I got to kill this thing.
It's supposed to be intimidating.
Well, there is a flattening of effect that's going on, because I've talked about this before, that when I was a kid, you really got exposed to artists by going to the bookstore and looking at covers, and sometimes you didn't know who it was, or it had nothing to do with the story in the book. It was quite common, but you just something about that cover, that's how you found out about Brasgalla and people like that. But unless you managed to get hold of a magazine somewhere that had a good interview, there was no way to find out more about any of it. You were just like, you find out years later what the real story was. But now we can get a hold of anything, and everybody is sharing techniques like crazy. And so everybody, I know, especially like I said, like you said, I don't want to throw shade, but in the concept art world, they're all looking at each other, and there is a flattening effect. I feel like sometimes as old timers, we managed to escape that because
Camera
we've
doesn't
got
want to pick it up.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, just because we are drawing from stuff way back when the styles were totally different. Those people are still in our head. You know, there's things I'm still working out that were things I found out about in the late 70s or early 80s.
Yes.
You know, I'm still trying to figure out how they did it.
Yeah.
And that's why somebody like Michael Whelan, that's why he's so popular. You know, it's because he was onto something. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So and that's not to say that there isn't like a lot of work. I mean, I know that certain artists have told me that it's a sort of brutal because there's all these young people coming up behind you who are motivated and they've got everything at their disposal and they're good, you know, and you have to hustle.
So
it's
Dave,
a bit like being a writer. There are so many more writers today that are better than me, that have more imagination and more energy and more everything. And the only thing I've got that they don't have is experience. But it's a much more challenging and also more, what do you say in English? It's a more rewarding pool, or whatever you say. It's like earlier as a writer, you were like sort of like, well, there were not that many of us that wrote for role-playing games, but now you have to sort of compete with people who are brilliant and who are motivated and who have fresh new ideas. So I'm trying to get all my writing out now while people still think it's interesting.
Before people get even better.
I just I want to say something really quickly there, Magnus, because that is and for both of you guys, but I mean that is you know, that those statements that you just made are extremely humble statements. So
very much so.
You know, and yes, I mean, there is a wealth of talent that's out there right now, and there are some very different tools with AI and things like that. But you know, don't sell yourself short. Don't exactly. I mean, you know, you and Dave have both. You know, you are part of that legacy that's out there, and
and one thing that I think both me and Dave, pardon me for speaking for you, Dave, here now, but I think the perseverance is something that we both have. But otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this, because you have to just keep on. You do bad stuff, you do good stuff, but you sort of like have to do mostly good stuff. But you have to also be prepared to not do your best all the time, but you have to persevere. You have to continue. You have to slog on. You have to. Dave, you said you've been in a band, and that's at least perseverance, like going out there, touring, and just slogging through
for no money.
For no money, exactly.
But I mean, I agree with everything you guys have just said. You know, and we've talked about it here on the update log a number of times. You know, over the last what are we up to, like 80 episodes now, Craig?
It's getting there.
Yeah, where you do have to, if you're going to do anything, not just game design or writing or art or, you know, development, like anything that you put yourself into, especially if it's, well, not especially, but I've found it more so in artistic and creative endeavors. You're going to get kicked in the teeth more often than not. Hopefully you learn from them, and hopefully, you know, you grow from that. But you're gonna have, it's not a question of if you're gonna experience a bad day or a bad week or month or year. It's when it's gonna happen. And you got to really, just like you said, you got to slog through it. And again, you know, you guys in the decades that you've been doing this, you know, whether professionally or not, you know, is a testament to that. Because, you know, Dave, again, you stepped back from art for a while, you did something else, but, you know, you came back to it, but you didn't stop that creative endeavor, you know. And then, you know, same thing with you, Magnus. You were writing since you were a kid, you know, like you said earlier off screen, you were writing these at least at the time you thought they were great, but these Star Wars stories. No. But you just kept going, you know.
Sure.
So you have to. But I actually have a question for you, Magnus. Based off, it's kind of circling back to what you said, Dave, about that kind of that flattening out of a lot of the art. And again, not saying it's getting bad, but I agree with you where you're seeing a lot of art that and again, coming from I guess less than a layman in terms of art, because you can show me a $1 million piece of artwork and a $10 piece of artwork. If they look roughly the same, I won't be able to tell the difference. But you've seen a flattening out of kind of the art styles where they start to look a little similar. Magnus, my question to you is that happening to the writing? Because I personally have seen some, especially in similar genres, where some of the writing is getting similar, and I'm gonna kind of poke fun at D&D a little bit here, where that's where I've seen it a lot, where it seems very samey, from module to module.
Okay.
I'm not seeing the raw and, as you said, visceral, in this case, writing that we used to see.
No. It's a very interesting question. I haven't thought about that. Let's see if my voice gets dropped again. No,
sorry.
That's okay. No, it's a very interesting question that I haven't put that much thought into. But it is inevitable that it sort of like standardizes on a certain way of writing things. Like, I've never been published for Dungeons and Dragons. I've been rejected a couple of times because they said that this is not how we write Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And I'm like, well,
okay.
I don't care. This is how I write stuff. But they didn't. And now it's sort of like a vindication now that Dragonbane is sort of like showing that, well, we don't have to write a dungeon crawl. We can do this. We can do adventure sites like Free League does, and people like that. So, but it's sort of like, yes, it's sort of like role-playing game writing can be reduced to sort of like a formulaic way of doing it. Like, okay, you have to write 20 rooms. How do you do that? Okay, 20 rooms, 30 rooms, 100 rooms. And I ran into that while writing for the bestiary for Free League, because what happened was that Thomas Herenstam from Free League contacted me and said that, okay, Magnus, we've seen some of your third-party monsters that you've written for the gaming magazine we have in Sweden, which is called Phoenix, which is one of the only gaming magazines in print in the world. And I've written some third-party stuff for that, and had Anders Vitus, Anton Vitus, who actually illustrated the Dragonbane NPCs in the box. So he's done some work for me there. And they said, well, we see that you can do monsters, and could you help us with the monster book? And I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. I really, I'm proud of being the only writer who's written for all three game material for all three publishers of Dragonbane. So I really wanted to put my mark on. Okay, so I can be part of the monster book. So then I sat down. Okay, so what do I do? I write, and Thomas was like, well, yeah, you just here's Dave's pictures. Okay, yeah, you just write a monster for each. Okay, these are 65 monsters. And I'm like, okay, so over 2 months I wrote 60 or 65 monsters or something like that. And for those of you familiar with Dragonbane, you know that they have monster attacks, which is a table. You roll a d6, and that monster attack hits automatically. So they have 6 different attacks they can do every round, or 2 or 3 times a round. So basically, I did 360 monster attacks. And if you approach role-playing game writing like that, which we had to do because we had to do it basically, it can be sort of like formulaic. It can be samey. Because, well, this is my 300th monster attack. How can I vary that? And that's sort of like if you write lots of stuff for a game, if you write a big book and you're by yourself, it can be really difficult. That's why you need to do this as a group activity. So what I did then went to Free League, who developed it into getting not the samey thing that sort of like when I have to hit this monster quota now, so I'll just do some shortcuts here, and then they could, okay, here you took a shortcut, let's do something different. And I think that this sameness can be seen most, like you say, in the what was formerly known as D20 stuff, like, or 5e material now. But I have to say that Merc Borg really kicked that to the curb. Like Merc Borg just said, well, we don't want to do that. We just want to do this.
Doing something different. Yeah.
And I think that's extremely interesting, because that's visceral, it's immediate, it's like, wow, here we are, it's short, it's compact, and it's like you said, Dave, you read a lot of heavy metal, and Merc Borg is a lot more heavy metal than anything, and that sort of freed up the sort of like thinking about, well, we don't have to do all these bum where everything is put in neat boxes and everything like that. We can do this,
and people will enjoy it. Yeah, again, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You know, I think, and there's nothing inherently wrong, at least in my opinion, with a standardized approach. You know, brand to brand. I think, you know, definitely brand specific. There's nothing wrong with that. I think when it becomes a problem is when everyone starts doing it, regardless of brand. And for me, and again, just my personal opinion, that's what it started to look like until I got introduced to things like Merc Borg, probably mispronouncing it, and like Free League stuff. Because again, you guys are very much taking me back to, because I started playing D&D, you know, more than 20 years ago in 3rd edition. I've played every edition except for 1st. I've played 3rd, 2nd, 3, 5, 4. We don't talk about 4, and 5th. I haven't played 1st edition. One of these days I want to, but I noticed the different writing styles, and even Dave, art styles of those earlier versions. And as it progressed, and they were more visceral, a little bit more natural, and I would even say in a good way more unpolished. And I like that. It like now it feels a little too how do I put it? Sterile, too clean. So again, reading, you know, going through more Borg stuff, Dragonbane stuff, looking at the art for Dragonbane, for Symbrom, and kind of reading through some of the stuff that they have there. I want more of the industry, especially in the TTRPG community, to continue to do that. I mean, you have some standouts. You have like Chaosium that does, Call of Cthulhu. I've looked at some of their stuff, and it does have that more visceral and kind of, I guess I'm gonna say, a dirtier approach to the writing and the art, as opposed to like the clean feeling I get when I play D&D. That's just my opinion.
Well, and art is an interesting thing. When I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, I started playing with the Red Box Elmore set, and I loved Caldwell, and I loved Elmore, and I loved Easley, and now I love Errol Otis and Dave Trampier, and sort of like it shifts. But at the time, as a young person, I really liked the more photorealistic stuff. But as I realized that they were using photos as sort of the basis for their illustrations, I sort of grew disillusioned with that, and I sort of like was looking more at illustrations that were had less of a stage. One of you said that it looked staged, and if you look at a lot of the later Elmore Caldwell stuff, it looks really staged. But some of the stuff is brilliant. The red dragon box, the red box dragon thing, and Lord Soth's ride and stuff like that. Really brilliant.
I find that I am rather difficult for especially newer artists. There's a lot of talent out there, but I'm rather difficult because I don't like doing the picture illustration thing. I don't. I want to tell you what I want to see. I don't want to show you what I want to see. I want to take it from here, tell it to you, and you make it. And I know that's extremely hard. But
I don't like to tell. I've done a couple book covers, and I was very wary about it because it was, the main character on the cover, and I didn't really want to push my idea of what that character looked like into the reader's head. I wanted them to do it for themselves. So as much as I can leave mysterious, I want to do that. So a lot of stuff is quite explicit in like saying like this is the character, this is what they're wearing, this is the situation. And I thought it makes me think of that what we said earlier about that. Like there used to be book covers that didn't have anything to do with the book back in the 70s. You know,
no.
They didn't really spoil anything for you. But also talking about styles, there's something, you know, when you're influenced by a lot of these Nordic artists, like Jan Bauer, he illustrated the fairy tales for the book that all the kids grow up on here. And there, when we had the Spell Congress, I saw young people, you know, kids standing in line with their books to be autographed, you know, by different people.
Nice.
I mean, there's young players coming up, and I'm talking kids. You know, it's easy to think about, you know, the big group of adults who are doing it, and the old timers and the veterans, and that's a great community. But there's young people coming up, so I want it to have an appeal for them too. You know, I want them to be able to get into it, and it's not that, oh yeah, that stuff looks really, you know, too gritty and too gory. But I think, you know, we actually get away with a lot. You know, there's because it is it's how do you say it in English? It's more storybook in a way. It is. There's a bit of whimsy to it. You know, there's an edge to it that is a little softer, and I like that as well. You know, it doesn't take itself so seriously that you can't have a little fun in the picture or in the writing, or and I like that. I think that helps appeal to maybe younger kids who just want to have an adventure, right? It doesn't have to be grimdark for them, you know.
No. Even though I love grimdark, but still, that whimsy thing is something that Free League also wants to sort of convey with the new Dragonbane material. It's not, and also the one of the adventures in the box that I wrote, which is called Trollspire, is also sort of like harkens back to the whimsy of the fairy tales. It's not a dungeon delve. It's not a combat sludge. It's like, it's more like you meet a PC that's interesting, and you speak to that PC, and it sort of like is more of a fairy tale vibe to it. And people have asked me, what is the difference between Dragonbane and Dungeons and Dragons? And well, apart from the rules set, my opinion is that Dragonbane is a lot more sort of closer to this folkloristic feel. It's much closer to ourselves than Dungeons and Dragons, which can be sort of like high concept, whereas this is not low concept, but it's sort of like very much more intimate. It's a much more intimate kind of game world. And so also the rules also are allows for more intimate interaction with the world, because it's not a hero, zero to hero. It's more like, well, you start low and you sort of work yourself up maybe, but it's not a wish fulfillment game. Dragonbane is not a wish fulfillment game as much as Dungeons and Dragons is.
There's so much.
Definitely what D&D is, which is part of its charm. Like, I do enjoy D&D, and there is an aspect of that, just like wish fulfillment becoming so like strong, powerful, and all that stuff that makes it enjoyable. But there is also, like what you said, that more intimate setting where I guess it's more like it keeps you a little more like grounded, I guess. Yeah. And there is definitely something to that as well.
Yeah.
Because even when I play a character in D&D, I always try to keep them a little grounded, because I don't want to be like the huge heroes. Like character is just a guy who's in this situation, just doing the best he can.
There's an element of role playing games though that, I mean, in the vast, you know, there's a fine line, a distinction between what is my imagination and what is me, and people, you know, when you create a character, you always put a part of yourself into that. Maybe it may be a desired part of yourself. It may be you know, just something that you want to explore, but you always put a part of yourself into that character. And that's kind of what I'm hearing when I listen to that, is that's what people do. So, you know, when we're writing, when we're creating, my mind goes to, then that's how we should create. We should create to facilitate that need for the player. Not just about telling great story, which great story is the key to it, but make sure that story allows for that player to be able to create that character that is in some way a vision of themselves as that, whether it's maybe it's an ogre or a high elf or a druid or whatever it happens to be. There's one of the pictures that I put in the carousel here of the cat person coming out of Dragonbane. And that one just sets with me for several years. We created content for an online community, just kind of free content, more or less. And it was based off of the Elder Scrolls universe, and they one of the primary races in there is more or less a cat person. So Khajiit. Yeah, and
I love those things.
When I was looking through, okay, I gotta find the right art here, and that one came up for me, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's going in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dev.
The Primordial Being in the chat I just saw is making a comment about the charm of a more sketch-like style that looks like a character in the setting Druid after seeing the creature once. Before that old Michael Whelan cover, the green one, before they knew whether or not they would have the rights to use that. Oh wait, that was a different one. The one for, what was it? Why can't I think straight? It was the monster book. That's also a Whelan. They weren't sure. Yeah, they weren't sure whether they would they were going to use that or not. I actually started working. Nobody asked me to do it, but I started making a new cover that had a lot of stuff going on. Like there's a big dragon, because you got to have a dragon, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Name. But there were orcs, there were trolls, there were like weird shaman creatures, and in the foreground, up on like sort of hiding on a rock ledge, were two characters, and one of them has this book open and this ink pot, and they're drawing it.
That's so good, so cool.
That's a good detail. That's really good.
I really should finish that, because it was like 50% done, but that was to me, like, that's somebody made the monster book in the universe.
Right.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
Like another.
I want to see that, Dave. I want to see that. I want to see that. You need to do it.
Yeah,
because that sounds perfect. Go ahead, Matt.
That sketch style, I think, like, because I'm the Primordial Being. I typed that in chat, but so I think a power that style has for role playing games is that, because you can tell that, like, if something just looks like it was sketched by a character in setting, that also kind of, it leaves an element of vagueness in it that lets your imagination do some work.
Yeah.
Like like, this is what this person drew, but like, what does it really look like? And so, like, you kind of have your imagination going for that. So you may, like,
there was
fill some details in your head.
But there was an artist who gave me that advice once. They said, never tell the whole story. And maybe I think maybe that might have something to do with a lot of what's going on that's so polished now. It's amazing. I mean, that's like, I can't do it. But it's wonderful. But if you give, it's like people that do this like photorealistic portrait of Morgan Freeman, it's great, but it looks just like a photograph. It doesn't give me anything that a photograph doesn't give me, even though it's obviously an incredibly high level of craft.
Yes.
But if you don't tell the whole story, then your mind, the viewer's mind, gets engaged in completing it and finishing it. Right. If you look at, I always use the example of Frazetta. He's so detailed where he wants you to look in his pictures, and then go out from it, like the Death Dealer, perfect example, one of the all-time famous Frazetta. Incredible detail. He does the male, but then as soon as you get out from that and you get away from the horse, and the ground, like the rocks are just, he drew a circle with a brush. There's nothing there, because he's driving you to where he wants you to look, and your mind completes the rest. You don't have to say all that stuff. And then people get engaged with it because there's something for them to do. There's a way for them to participate in the artwork. And I think this sketchier style that we've been using for Dragonbane lends itself to that. I know that quite often in the brief it says, make it a vignette, don't finish out to the edges.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. And then remember, like, never tell the whole story, because then there's nothing for the player to do.
Right.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
That sort of puts the finger on a, let's say, a challenge writing for and illustrating role-playing games, is that the audience, and I've been there myself as a young role-playing gamer, when you discover role-playing games, you're like, wow, this is so cool, and I want to know everything. I want to know everything about this monster. I want to know the hit points. I want the size. I want the less. I want treasure. I want this and this and this, and I want to know what it looks like. So role-playing gamers, at least earlier, were more focused on the more. This is like you said, Matt. I think this is what it looks like. What does it look like? What are the stats? Is it more powerful than this? Less powerful than this? And I remember when we did the second edition of Cult that I worked on, we changed the monster descriptions in Cult, because Cult is very much a game where you shouldn't show the stuff. It's like it's impression. It's like atmosphere. It's not something where you say that this is what a nephrite looks like. This is this is like that. But right. it's more like Alien. Like, you don't show the monster, you show stuff like that.
Right.
So what we did.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah. But so what we did for Cult Second Edition was that me and Peter Bergting, who's a great comic book artist and also a role-playing game illustrator who works with Mike Mignola and works for Dark Horse Comics. He's a great guy, very talented. So what we did was that we sort of like, well, the monsters were described using snippets of text that sort of like were. This is ripped from the hidden volume of Leonardo da Vinci, who wrote about these monsters. So all I did was like a word collage of stuff, and what Peter did was he drew parts of the monsters, and he said, this is what it might look like at the beak, this is what a claw might look like, and stuff like that. And yeah, that was really great. People hated it because they wanted to know what they looked like. They wanted to know what the monsters looked like, and they wanted to read a description that said, nephrite is 2.5 meters tall, and it has protruding spikes from the shoulders, and blah 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 blah. Not everyone, of course, because as people grew more, sort of like what Dave is describing, is that people realized that, well, this sort of fires up the imagination. People sort of like accepted that. But when we released the second edition Cult, people were like, well, it doesn't really describe the monsters. And we're like, no, of course not, because it's not supposed to. And so sometimes you work, I wouldn't say against the audience, but people have sort of like a more scientific expectations of a monster book than what we are creating today.
Right, like it's a science book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Swedish role-playing games have traditionally been a lot more like that. Like in the old monster book, like this one, all the monsters have Latin names, and I remember the ogre was named
Grim style.
Yeah, it's the ogre was named Styganthropus Magnus, which is my name. So I remember that really well. But it was more scientific. It was like a classification of monster. This is a monster. It's like Linné. It's like a monster with 2 arms is a human. 2 arms and 2 legs is a humanoid. So we put them in the humanoid section and stuff like that. Whereas, like you said, the orc picture is much more like, well, this is an orc. This is cool.
Yeah.
And we sort of got lost in that in Sweden. It's like that where we were sort of boring, actually. And when Riot Minds took over in the 2000s with Trudvang, the compensating Trudvang, they went back to the sort of visceral, the sort of, this is what we should feel when we view the art. And I think, Dave, that's also why they sort of picked you up, because what I can tell from the things that you've drawn for the monster book is like, this is, you feel something when you see the pictures. It's not just this
glad.
is an encyclopedia, but it's something that is awakens something in you.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something, Magnus, there that I think I was trying to get at, and I kind of got to my previous point, but and you also mentioned it as well, Dave, but the show don't tell, and I think a lot of TTRPG art and story are now showing too much. Sorry, telling too much, and sorry, telling too much and not showing, not like showing enough. Like it's too, they're giving away the game in its entirety, and instead of just letting us glimpse through the bush at that orc, again going back to that very visceral picture, and letting us kind of step into that setting as that guy with the ink pot drawing the orc, like, oh, okay, we'll get the, that I think we need more of in our art. And again, you're seeing it a lot with Free League stuff, but also in the writing. And I think, again, Magnus, going back to you, that's something that you do well. Like you're not giving away the whole game, well, not just you, but all the writers, at least, because again, it's a group project. You're not giving away the whole game, which as a player, and again, it's definitely very subjective. I want to put that out there. Different strokes for different folks. Everybody's gonna want their thing their way. But for me, I like that approach where I get an outline of the thing, of the story, of the orc. And then I fill in the blanks myself, and it's going to be different than what Matt fills in on his end, because he's going to look at that and feel and see something completely different. And I think that's really good. That's really good. I love that approach.
What do you mean? Matt doesn't have opinions.
This part, I feel like there's pros and cons to each side.
True.
What we're talking about right now, because we'll talk about like the sketchbook style. I guess the more like vague sense. It does let people like have their imaginations work, and that can work for a lot of people, but there is like this risk that is run where people in the same group may be thinking of very different things. Meanwhile, the like more exact style that say D&D has leaves a little less room for the imagination, but lets people kind of share the same mental image a lot more easily. I think there's pros and cons.
It dazzles as well.
Yes, it does that as well.
Which is a great effect, that gets people excited in a different way. They're like, this thing looks so cool,
Still, it's a lot. As a game master, I do a lot of game mastering. I've always done that. It's also playing Dungeons and Dragons. It can be challenging when people are like, "Oh, so what the monster arrives, it emerges from the cave. It's got 2 heads. It's an Etin." Oh, okay, yeah, sure, okay. Well, there's another monster. It looks like this. Oh, it's that monster. People, they are so clearly illustrated and described that people can identify them straight away. And I think that can be a challenge to me as a game master. Sometimes it's like I can't conjure the sense of awe and sort of, wow, this is cool, because people know that, well, it's an Etin, they look like this and this and this and this and this. So it's sort of like there are 2 different forces, like you say, Matt. It's like it pulls in different directions, but I think that the conflict or the friction between these 2 need to be there, so that we don't get too sketchy and we don't get too specific and scientific and boring. Basically, it has to be something in the middle. And I have to say that me as a writer, I lean more towards the boring bits. So what Free League did with my text was sort of like to sort of like spruce them up with some fun and not so like the matter of fact. And I think that writers for role-playing games who are leaning towards more like structured and so shouldn't be disheartened by us saying that, well, it's the imagination and ideas and stuff like that. There is a place for clearly structured material that is easy to pick up. Like you're saying, Matt, it's like it can discourage people if they don't really know. Some people want to know what Cthulhu looks like before they want to run a game, because someone might ask them and they want to be able to say that, well, he looks like this. And we shouldn't discount those experiences either. We just have to sort of find a way to make everyone happy. And it doesn't have to be in the same game. Yes. Some people might play Merkborg, some people might play Dungeons and Dragons, some people might play Call of Cthulhu. We don't know what Cthulhu looks like. Okay.
I do. I saw him in Underwater.
Oh, okay.
We don't look upon the great old ones. Yeah, it's probably not the best. That's probably not the best thing to do.
We're not even supposed to talk about him.
Yeah, they drive you mad and all that. Yeah, I like my brains where they're at.
That's
I did some Elric illustrations, and Moorcock's descriptions of monsters can be pretty psychedelic. So I wanted to paint him facing this creature, and I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to draw this thing? So I thought about the Golden Age illustrators like N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle do amazing work. Yeah, like N.C. Wyeth, he did all these illustrations for like Treasure Island. They're amazing, just incredible work.
Okay.
And I read, or I was talking to an artist friend of mine, I think, and they said that, Frazetta always painted the moment of maximum action, like peak action. The John Carter's, leaping over all the, he's got the sword and he's going over all the apes of Mars,
Yep.
with this red cape. It's amazing. But N.C. Wyeth, he would paint the moment before that happened or the moment after that happened, not the moment something was actually happening. And it's a subtle distinction, I think, but it's an interesting way to come at it. You're still describing things, but maybe not telling people exactly how it goes down.
Yeah.
To leave a little bit of, I think it's respectful. Like, well, you said, some people might just get mystified if you don't give them enough information about how to proceed. But I think it's respectful to let them like finish it. Like here's enough pieces to get the whole thing rolling, and then you decide how it goes from here. So I had to, the monsters I drew for the Elric picture, I don't know what Moorcock would think about that, but
all right. So,
but I tried. It's just weird.
Before we move away from this point where we're at right here, so because we have a game that we're actually working on right now. It's new, but it's Eldritch Horror in nature. And since we're
thank Matt for that.
Since we're on that since we're on that topic right now, I'd like to just dig into that a little bit. I mean, what from both of you guys. So from an artistic standpoint, when it comes to that Eldritch Horror genre, and understanding that you know absolutely nothing about the game that we're working on, but when you're thinking about that, where does your mind go? And Magnus, that's the same question for you from a writing standpoint. So Dave, how about you from an illustration standpoint when it comes to these Eldritch Horror worlds? And kind of taking into context what one person in the audience, Insomnia Night, was saying about, well, have we ever actually seen Cthulhu? Don't we know what he looks like? What's in your head?
Well, I think about the reference you made earlier to Alien, Ridley Scott in the first movie. It's like you really don't get a good look at that creature until the very end. And then it's almost too much. The more you see of it, the less frightening it is in general.
Yeah.
But it was hard with the Elric stuff because it's like I didn't want to describe it too much. I just like, how do I make this thing scary without having to actually draw it? Or because I felt like whatever I pinned down, it wouldn't be as scary as what I could imagine. It's like the alien. When you don't know what it looks like, it's much scarier. Once you know what it looks like, you can decide how you feel about it. You know. But then again, on the same part, there's a brief shot in Alien that I love because it's one of the only shots that really gives that creature the like true nightmare quality, and it's the shot where Parker and Lambert go down to get the oxygen tanks, and it's coming. It like turns, and it. Sorry if it's a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen this old movie. It kills Parker. Yeah, it kills Parker, and then turns back to her, and she's terrified. You know, she can't move. It's like she's looking. She knows she can't. She's like, I can't. He's like, get out of the way. She's like, I can't. I'm frozen in terror. And then you see just the briefest shot of the alien, and it's going like this. You know, its arms are out, and it's sort of like it's floating across the room to her, and you only see it from like the mid chest up, but its arms are just coming out, and it's nightmarish. You know.
Oh yeah.
So I think there are ways that you can show the monster, and yet you have to find that angle in to something that's creepy. I used to get impatient with these people that would like try to get all scientific about the alien or the predators, you know, and I was like, well, what's the life cycle? I was like, no, man, the more you deconstruct this thing, the less scary it gets. It doesn't have eyes, because something that doesn't have eyes and still can see you is nightmarish, you know? Giger wasn't trying to like world build. He was making stuff that would psychologically freak you out.
Oh yeah,
you know, it has a human skull inside of it, you know, but the mouth comes out. It's like, you know, it's horrible.
There's horror in the unknown. So it's like with the alien, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. Like, how can it live in space without, like, it doesn't need to like breathe? Like, how does it, as a living being, function?
really nothing about it makes sense.
Exactly, and that's kind of the point, because it doesn't make sense. Like, you know it's a living thing, but you have no idea how it fucking works. So it's like, what do I do with this thing? So that's
what am I going to do?
Comes in.
I'm screwed.
So like, so I think that's like a big part of like horror and like making something scary. It's like what you can tell people, like what they can know, but also let them know these are all the things you don't know about this thing. You know, it got from the scene of what to show, what not to show.
Yeah, the scene with Tom Skerritt as the captain when he goes into the tubes to try and flush it out. And you never, I mean, you see it just for a flash instant at the very end when it gets him. But up until that point, you never see it. There's no battle with him and the alien, you know. It's just him in this claustrophobic space that is constantly ratcheting up his tension. He's getting more and more freaked out, you know. So you're sort of like right next to his like completely jangled nerves, where he finally says, I got to get out of here. I can't take it anymore. I'm getting out.
See, I think that is the beauty of that story right there, is, and it not I absolutely agree with what you're saying about the monster, for sure. I mean, you know, that is horrifying, and that's what draws you into that horror aspect, is that, okay, I don't know what this looks like. I don't know what it can do. All I know is that it's you know, what I've seen of it scares the shit out of me, and it's killing everyone. So, but it also, on the other side of that, gives the opportunity in the movie. Hold on a second. Let me get Dave back here. I don't want to continue with that thought because I want to run that thought past him.
With Dave, yeah.
Sheila seems to be picking on Dave today.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
It really is.
It's the only way to get. It's the only way to get me to stop talking.
Well, so the end of that thought for you, Dave, is it also provides like the essential ingredient to be able to explore the characters. You know, and I think that plays well in movies, but I think that, you know, that is to me that's a key element in any type of written content, and especially role-playing games, is providing that opportunity for people to really explore their character and not just play a stereotype. You know what I mean? We build so much into, and I show my age for a moment here, but I mean, I think it's an impact of video games across the board, because we tend to stereotype into particular things, like typically from the video game world, you have your DPS or your damage dealer, you have your healer, and then you have your tank, and those are your three elements that make up a party to go fight the big monster. So we tend to fall into this category of, what am I? I'm the badass guy who, tough and rough and nothing can hurt me, or I'm the intelligent, sympathetic, heartfelt, emotional healer type that's going to take care of, I'm going to save everybody. Maybe I have some issues, but I'm going to save everybody. And then you have the damage dealer, who can sometimes be very arrogant and overconfident of them. But you have those three stereotypes, which leaves such a wide spectrum of possibilities outside of those, that that's, to me, that's disappointing. And I think that's a big deal from a standpoint of being a content creator, is creating content in such a way that you really not only leave that wide open for people to explore, but you encourage them to do it.
Yeah, I think just to butt in there is that's Alien and Aliens are very good movies to look at when it comes to talking about what makes a great movie and what would make a great role playing experience, where. If we look at Aliens, for example, we have Vasquez and
Drake.
Yeah,
Drake.
Two wonderful characters, completely
wonderful
opposite.
characters, and they are the damage dealers, and they have these huge guns, and they are totally useless. And if we would present a situation like that in a role-playing game, we could be faced with disenfranchised players. They will feel like, well, I made a tank because I want to tank things, but now I can't. Whereas in the Aliens movie, it makes the characters stronger.
I have to take just one moment to throw some shade here, Magnus, because it really sounds like you're talking about fighters from Dungeons and Dragons.
Ah, okay, maybe. But it's also a question of games which have strong stereotypes. Like you say, we have a mage, a cleric, a thief, and a fighter, and you create those, and people sort of expect that to be the experience. I played the fighter, I played the mage. If we would do an Eldritch horror game, I don't feel that the stereotypes are that strong. I think that the game should be more open for different directions. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but
no, I'm following you.
Because when we play Call of Cthulhu, people don't make Marines. Well, if you play Delta Green, but if we play Call of Cthulhu, people they create librarians and professors and socialites and stuff like that, which means that the gameplay can go so many different places than if we have the four very strict stereotypes from Dungeons & Dragons, basically fighter, cleric, thief, and mage. And I think if we look back to your game, I think that's something that you should try to encourage, is encouraging people to not step into these video game ideas, but try to explore the character more. What makes this character tick, and what happens when this is challenged by, well, these horrors from outer space or whatever, wherever they come from. And that's really important.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The idea that sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I really appreciate that piece, because that is an extremely we've been kind of on that line with this, and it's an extremely fine line to try and walk. And it's the difficulty about it is because you have the traditional stereotype, And that's what you're fighting against with it, to try to open this up and create it in such a way that it makes sense and doesn't just kind of get pushed off to the side as I don't understand this, type of thing.
And it has to be gameable. People they have to feel that they can play something. Like Dave.
But I think with Eldritch Horror, it's also, like speaking from the art point of view, but actually just the whole idea of it, that just don't be afraid to have things not make any sense. It makes me think about Solaris, the film, where Jabarian says, if you keep thinking that there's an answer, you're going to die out here. It's just this idea of running up against something that is incomprehensible. That's Lovecraftian to me. Like as they were saying in the chat, if you look at it, you'll go crazy. So you can't even look at it. So are you going to be disappointed when your machine gun doesn't do anything? It's like against Cthulhu. Yeah. So I think that creates a challenge for the players, and both visually and from the writing standpoint. But as long as there is a way for them to find a solution based on the tools that they've been given, but not even being able to understand something can be a really powerful way to make something unsettling and strange. And that's what Moorcock does all the time with Elric. He never gets into the specifics. It's like out of the fog comes this rainbow thing. Nobody knows how big it is. Sometimes it's really small. Sometimes it's huge. It's like there's no illustrating these things. No, exactly. It's hard to do. So I did one. There's one where Elric is out in the woods and it's raining, and he's waiting for this creature from another dimension who's coming, and he knows who it is. So I drew a picture of him waiting for it, where he's up against a tree with his sword, with the rain streaming down him, like sort of looking over his shoulder. I said, well, I'll show the moment right before this monster shows up, and then I don't have to draw the monster. I draw the tension before it. So that's, I mean, I think you were talking about from the writing standpoint, I think from the graphic standpoint, that's one way to come at it.
That's just what I was going to say. Let's jump over to Magnus and see what he has to say on how you create that moment, because you've created the visual piece, which is awesome and definitely gives you the feeling. So now how do you write that?
I don't know. It's difficult to just say do this and do that.
Right.
Basically, what is so challenging writing stuff that is more horror and more that kind of atmosphere is that it's important to convey the horror and the dread. Try to find the dread. Okay, what is it?
Dread. That's good.
What's we don't know what's in the shadows. We don't know what's in the mist. But at the same time, since it's a role-playing game, people have to have hope. They have to have hope that they might survive this. They might do something about it. If you would put Cthulhu as the end boss, I think you should have some way of not defeating him or her or whatever, but stopping what's going on. You have to have some sort of hope, because if you don't have hope, you don't have anything to lose when you encounter the monster. If everything is, we played Alien a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, something, and it's a brilliant game with the stress mechanic and everything like that. But in the end, we were like so stressed out by the game, in a positive way, sort of thing, that we just sort of like, no, we can't survive this. Let's just blow everything up. So
it still has to be fun, right?
Yeah,
it has to be fun.
And that was fun, but then all hope was lost, and we sort of like, okay, well, screw it, let's blow the ship up, bam. But you have
it's the only way to be sure.
It's the only way to be sure, exactly. But you have to have the player characters, the players, not the player characters, but the players have to feel that sort of like, we can do this. You can't just smack them in the head with Cthulhu and say that, well, this is you died. But they have to sort of like, what, we can do something about this. and that's something for the writer to sort of like figure out. What kind of options can you give to the players so that they feel that they can do something about it? Because otherwise, it's sort of like just a Saw movie where horrible things happen.
Like
you just you already know what's going to happen. Something
exactly
horrible.
like that.
Yeah, like,
that can be fun.
Yeah, but like in all that darkness, there needs to be like a light, you know.
Yeah.
Because when it's doom and gloom all the time, I can definitely see like as players and even like in myself, like where if it's like that all the time, it would be like, okay, I need a break.
There's no point.
Yeah, it just messes with your head after a little while, you know.
It does, and that's sort of like one sort of thing that I can hold against games like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and Mörk Borg and some of the other games, that they are too grimdark. It's like grimdark becomes a thing in itself, whereas it's like, oh, this is just grimdark because it's supposed to be grimdark. But there has to be something that makes it bearable for the players, basically.
There's actually a lot of cute. There's a lot of cute moments buried in the bestiary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's tiny little things in the pictures. You know, there's a surprising amount of cute in it.
Anything
even though it's all the monsters.
We're
the cutest baby bear in the world.
Oh.
If you look at the forest troll, the one with the big waterfall.
Got it.
That little bear, I'm so proud of. Is
you didn't draw that one or anything, did you?
No, exactly.
Yeah. It's the troll that's standing above the waterfall, holding onto a tree. I think it's a forest troll.
Okay. No, that's the.
Whoops.
No, that's the giant. You're talking about the giant.
This thing is not liking Dave for some reason.
No, it's not.
So when it comes to like this entire like theme that we're going for, there's a lot of like fine lines that need to be walked in terms of like what we reveal, what we don't reveal, how dark things are, where the moments of light, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difficult balance to like reach, but it's definitely one that we're trying to like work out. Because obviously, you know, a lot of stuff that's happened in the world, we have to explain some of how it happened, but we can't explain everything.
No.
And then, as dark as the world is, where are those moments of hope? Where are the things that make life still bearable in this world? You know?
Yeah.
It's also a case that I feel that some of the most beautiful role-playing game books I have are the Sandy Peterson's Field Guide to Cthulhu Monsters, but they are so essentially the opposite of what we are talking about. That's sort of like, this is the Sandy Peterson guide. This is what it looks like. Brilliantly illustrated, but it sort of reduces the horror element. It's just like, oh, well, we can go out with the Boy Scouts and look at the Cthulhu monsters. And I think that Eldritch horror games are prone to the conflict between describing stuff that role-playing gamers want and not describing things that really fires up the imagination. Is something you should think about. How much do we want to, what do we want to describe, and how much do we want to go into detail? And the more you go into detail, the more you help the game master, but that will trickle down to the players, and the more you will lose the fantastical elements that Dave is talking about. It's like, this is something that is unknown. This is something that is strange. So that's a balance for that kind of game. I feel that Dungeons & Dragons is much more suited for just, this is a monster, it looks like this, and it has 12 hit points and blah blah blah, because people are so used to this being sort of like a game. But a Dragonbane doesn't do that. It's more like a sort of like atmosphere and style. Dave, that was the giant. I have, and I love your giants, because I don't know if people can see this illustration here. That's a mountain giant. Yeah. And let's see if I can get that. It's difficult, because this is great, because you have this is sort of like, you have a huge giant, giant, and you say, "Oh, this is a cool giant," and then you pan down and you have some goats. Like, oh, those are small goats. Oh, that's cool. It has goats, and then you pan down to the bottom of the page, and you have two tiny adventurers sneaking up on the giant, looking scared. And I love that kind of storytelling in the in illustrations. It's like it's not just this is the giant. This is the giant. Whoa! Oh, it has some goats. That's cool. Oh, who are these guys? And this is quintessentially the moment before something happens. The giant comes out of her cave, and the adventurers are like, "Oh my god, what's going to happen now?" That's cool.
Yep.
And then we have the forest giants as well. It has the bear and the bear cub. It's really great.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool stuff. Really great.
No, and that is one thing that I have noticed about like Dragon's Bane specifically, since that's the top, that's what we're talking about now. But a lot of Free League stuff is, I don't know if it's a happy coincidence by design, probably a bit of both. But I've noticed that they've managed to marry the art and the writing and make it. Obviously, this is what you want, but it fits. And in my mind, it fits in such a way where they complement each other. Like, again, you know, Dave, again, going back to the bestiary, a lot of your art, it tells that story that I feel like it tells a story of the show don't tell, and then the writing fills in that blank, the blanks, but still in a way that allows the imagination of the reader and ultimately the player to kind of work for itself. And I think, again, you guys, the whole team, the two of you and everyone you work with, did a really fantastic job in that. So for anyone watching, go buy the bestiary. It's really good.
Yes. Dave, I have a
It's
question
really
though. Is that when you did these illustrations that is in the bestiary now, but you did them in 2016 for the retro or 2017 or something like that?
The bulk of them, yeah.
The bulk of it, yeah. What? Because when I started writing, I got the instructions like I mentioned earlier. It's like, look at Dave's illustrations and write something that fits with them. But you didn't. Did you get descriptions of the monsters, or how did the art direction look like then?
They were like short briefs.
Oh, okay.
It should be sometimes it was specific, like there's an ogre that's holding down a goblin,
yes mm-hmm.
stepping on him,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was funny. It's a funny picture. But they told me
Definitely
specifically to do that. He's just brained a goblin over the head. But a lot of times it was just, okay, it just needs to be a vampire of some kind of vampiric creature. And so I had a lot of leeway in most cases. I would send comps of the ideas, and they would say, yeah, that looks good. Yeah. So, or the mummy, for instance, I was always trying to put like a little second layer of story into it somehow. There's a mummy in there, and he's guarding this chest, but the chest doesn't have gold in it. It's filled with scorpions.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Cool.
So
really nice.
Yeah, just little things like that. I just have a lot of fun.
Little bits of visual storytelling. Yeah, and again, I like the marriage of the writing and the art. Again, obviously, I'm pretty sure that's what you're looking for. But again, for me, in keeping with the show and don't tell, the leaving some ambiguity there, it stood out to me because, again, as we said prior to, we play plenty of D&D, and I don't want to feel like I'm ragging on them, but they don't do that. They don't do that, and it's definitely, it shows. And I after seeing the two side by side, comparatively, I know which one I prefer more.
Yeah, I've only worked with the Free League on two game lines, and that's Dragonbane and Forbidden Lands. And this time with Dragonbane, we had Dave's pictures to work from, which is not very common that you have the illustrations before you start writing. At least not for me.
Really?
I usually do the writing, and then the people illustrated. And that was for Bitter Reach. I worked with a very talented guy called Alvaro Tapia, which is extremely talented.
Really?
He's so good.
Yeah.
And he he was really integrated into the production, which is so Free League. They don't create books and leave spaces for illustrations to sort of like get there. At least when I work with them, we write and we illustrate at the same time. So when I wrote Bitter Reach, I would also write descriptions like the short ones that you got, Dave, for the monster book for Riot Minds. I would write sort of like I want this picture to be of adventurers climbing down through the crack in the ice, and a snow serpent comes up around this sort of like icicle thing, and he would do it, and I would like look at that and I'm like, wow, this is so cool, and I would change the writing to fit that thing. Whereas as like you say, Rob, I don't want to be ragging on Dungeons and Dragons. I love Dungeons and Dragons and I love playing Dungeons and Dragons, but it feels more like they have their thing and then they make place for illustrations they pick from different people, and that also might fire up the imagination. Like this is a style and this is a style, and this, it doesn't have to be the same style. Free League games, they are of a style. Johan Egerkrans, Dave Brasgalla, Alvaro Tapia, Martin Grip, for example, it has a style. And I think that's one of the powerful things about Free League games, is that people recognize that and they sort of like latch onto that. This is the atmosphere for the game. This is something that they feel. If I just want to loop back to talking about the Eldritch horror illustration thing. If you played the Dungeons and Dragons during the 80s, you might have played the Ravenloft module and the Ravenloft world.
Unfortunately, I haven't played any the old Ravenloft module. I want to, that I'm pretty sure Greg probably has it, so we're gonna have to play that one day.
Really, some great illustrations. And for the campaign setting Ravenloft, there's this person called Stephen Fabian, STEPHEN FABEAN, Stephen Fabian. If you Google his work and put Ravenloft in it, you will get incredibly atmospheric gothic horror images where you instead of showing Cthulhu, you might be showing a lighthouse with a storm brewing and water splashing up against the lighthouse and just a shadow. And that would be the illustration for this Cthulhu monster. Not a guy with tentacles, but the situation where he would appear, like you were saying, Dave, is like in the shadow, in the mist. It's
the
a
moment
presence.
before.
Yeah, it's a presence more than the fiction, something like that. Yeah. So Stephen Fabian, if you want to have atmospheric horror illustrations for role playing games, look at his stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and there's this one where it's this ghost ship essentially kind of moving through the scene with the fog and everything, and that like I honestly I'll be honest, it sends chills down my spine.
Exactly.
I was like, okay, I'd leave. I'd go back to wherever the hell I came from seeing that.
So Ravenloft is a great thing. That actually brings to mind, Dave. Have you encountered Tony De Terlizzi?
Yes.
Because I when I look at your stuff, I sort of feel there's sort of like a connection, sort of like similarities between his style and sort of like a whimsy, and the colors as well. It's like because he did a lot of Planescape stuff, but he also did Spiderwick things, and I feel that you close to that. Is that something you could recognize?
Not from him so much, but from some other artists who are whimsical. Justin Gerard, for instance, I think has a real wonderful, and I've had that. He came and was an instructor at one of our workshops, so I got to hang around with him a little for a weekend. I got to go through the National Museum here with him, which was like an education in itself.
Okay.
So he knew everything, all sorts of stuff. But he has a lot of sort of whimsy in his pictures. I think it's very appealing. It's and I can't draw or paint like him, but he's a source of inspiration, definitely. Like I said, when I was just a kid and I was learning cartoons, I was copying Von Bodet's work, like inking it, redrawing it and inking it just to learn what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's very cartoony, but I still use some of the things. Like he was very big on breaking the frame to have something be in the foreground. It would, like, the frame would come around them, right, and it pulls them sort of forward in space. And I still do things like that. I still there's several pictures in the bestiary, I think, where I break the frame. There's a frame that only goes partially around, which was it was not something that European artists were doing. Mobius said that he got fascinated by it. He saw the Americans doing it, starting to break the frames.
Mm-hmm.
And now mostly we're just doing vignettes, but I think it is. I mean, when I look at my pictures, I know I said this thing that everybody's looking at everybody else. I think that's also been a really good thing, because the level of quality has just been pushed so high. It's challenging for us to keep up. But it also means there's just stacks of amazing art now, and everybody's really willing to help each other and share techniques. So I don't think it's surprising that, like, some similarities crop up, because everybody's grooving on the same stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
But I can look at my pictures and I can point to everything that I'm doing and say, yeah, that's from this person. This is when I was in this stage. I used to do this a lot. But then the part of it that's me is my love of things like time of day, mood. I love a beautiful lighting effect of some kind. So, and fields of color, and figuring out how to, like, draw things without drawing them. I love, if I can make that happen, I get really excited. There was, I'll give you an example. In the bestiary, they decided they wanted this double page spreads that were going to be the sections, right? I said, well, we need illustrations for those. I was like, wow, 2-page spreads throughout the book. I was like, I really don't want to draw that much.
Oh, wow.
So I tried to come up with this way of using mostly silhouettes to convey a lot of information. I think the one with the dragon is really strong. Yeah, that one in the beginning, that one with the insects was almost completely flat, and you could see all the tunnels were diagrammed underneath that hive that they
that's
built.
so cool.
Also, the undead is a good example of that as well. It's like you have a
that's beautiful.
a silhouette.
It's just it's all silhouette.
Story.
Yeah. There's a little bit of lighting or detail, but I thought they worked really good, because they don't fight with the monsters
and the dragon.
Yeah. It's all form. This is what some of the Western artists that I really like that did Western art. Harvey Dunn talked about that, like, all you have to do is show the form of it, and maybe a little bit of detail inside, and they'll get it. People will get it.
Mm-hmm. And I think as for a creative decision, having the section, because the monster book, the bestiary is divided into humanoids, undead, beasts, insect people, blah blah, dragons, undead, stuff like that, and having the section dividers being that graphical makes it also easier for me as a reader to say, okay, I'm looking for the dragons, and it's not just another illustration of a dragon. It is something which is very different from the illustrations, which makes it easier to get into the book as a user. So it's also a graphical design layout thing that makes it better as a book, I think.
Yeah, and I was still able to get a little bit of story and mood into it. In the giant, in the giant section in the spread, he's watching the sunset. He's taking a moment.
Yeah.
So try to give them the creatures a bit of inner life.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like humanizing it a little bit. It's like the monster isn't just like monster mode, have to kill people all the time. It's like, nah, it's just taking a moment, enjoying the sunset, just like
the
person night, you know.
The mountain giant, when she's standing out in front of her cave, it's also that she has rams, which she keeps. Those are her rams, and her necklace is made of ram's horns, right? And then she's got an elk antler tied to a tree trunk. That's her weapon, you know. And her clothes, she doesn't have much, but the pelts are ram's pelts. So there's like, she's got like her own little, she's starting her morning, not knowing this.
Yep.
She's
just
getting
waking
snuck up on. Yeah.
Yep.
What I also found about your illustrations for the monster book is they have some sort of lightness to them. To me, they feel sort of like feather light. That they're not heavy with the acrylic colors and oil paintings and stuff like that. They're sort of like airy and sort of like, I don't know. I really like that because it's sort of like it's sometimes you can if you draw monsters, you sort of like get too much down into Cthulhu. This is dark and this is horrible and stuff like that. But if there's a lightness to it, I think that's appealing as well, to me at least. When I looked at it and I wrote the monsters as well, it helped me.
I hope that they made your job easier.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's really pleasing. I didn't know how it worked. You know, I was just told to do this, and I just did it and sent it off, and I didn't know where it went after that. And I have to say, I love the layout of the new book. It looks fantastic. I think it's really, it's a good looking book. Because I'm a graphic designer as well, so I look at it as a designer. I was like, wow, I love this. I wish I'd done something this good. So, like you said, the team is great.
It is.
It's passion for everybody, and I think that's something that comes out. What you were talking about, like circling way back, that when we saw these, you know, people doing this kind of work back in the 70s and 80s, it maybe wasn't all like super high level, but that there was this passion and immediacy that really came through.
Yeah.
If it had been more polished, we might not have seen that.
No, and I have my own special theory is that the more polished your role playing game is, the less surface there is for the players to attach to it. It's just if you buy the perfect role playing game, my theory at least is that gamers won't be interested in that because they want to tinker. They want no, this isn't good. I want to change this. I want to change this. I want to do this. I want to make this better. I want to do this and this and this. If it's just it's sort of like it becomes bland. So this energy that were in the 80s 90s games, like early Call of Cthulhu, early RuneQuest, early Dungeons & Dragons, Traveller and everything like that, had sort of like a surface for gamers to attach to, and they're like, okay, I like this, I like this. It's not perfect, but I can make it perfect, and then started making house rules and everything. If it's perfect, it's not interesting, really.
Yeah. It tells the whole story.
Yeah. Or maybe that's just a way to explain why my stuff isn't perfect. I don't know. It's
I could.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
No, exactly.
I could use that when I look about it. It's like, well, it's not supposed to be perfect, you know.
Homebrewing, the ability to homebrew a game is a huge plus for that game. And that part of I can't say too much about the concept that we have so far yet, but a large part of that concept, the reason I made it the way it is because it's very easily homebrewable. People can very easily and naturally introduce their own things to it.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. And I think that's part of what makes a game interesting and fun to play as well.
Yeah, those are my two main goals. I want it to be interesting to the players and fun.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if it's not both, then it's if it's not interesting, it's probably not going to land well, and if it's not fun, then you're not going to be playing it for very long. You know, because at the end of the day, you know, at least in my mind, we're there to as players, we're there to have fun. We're there to have a good time in whatever setting we're playing. And everything else is kind of, I guess the best way, everything else is secondary to that, if I'm being completely honest. Because fun is what keeps you at the table, keeps you getting interested in that kind of art, in the story, in the writing, in the mechanics, and the rules. So
I get I'm the business angle and mixed in with the creatives, so it really comes down to, first of all, determining what value is. That's what people want. That's what value is. And then figuring out how to provide that value. How do you create that value so that you are creating something that people want and enjoy?
Yeah, Greg keeps us from getting lost in the creative process.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. And it's one thing if you're making a game, you have to think a lot about that. I think that for example, Dragonbane, people ask me, say, so how do you write a monster for Dragonbane? What are the rules for writing a monster? And I say, I tell them that it's not a scientific process, it's an art. You write your monster and then you try it out. There are no set of rules that I know of about anyway to make a monster for Dragonbane. But if you want to start writing stuff, just do it. Just start doing it. And then if you move up to creating your own game, then you should start thinking about, okay, what do people want and how will that jive with what I'm doing and stuff like that. But until you reach that level or that sort of like breaking point in what you want to do, just do stuff. Just write, look at stuff, do a Google image search and find some cool monster and just write that. Try it out. Don't be too fixated on making the perfect thing. And I see that a lot in the Dragonbane creators community now, that people are just putting out stuff, and I love it. It's like new monsters and new adventures and new NPCs and new everything, and I love that. And I think that is one of the differences from when I started out, was that the venues for getting published were not that many. So it became more important to sort of like figure out how to get into the publishers, get their attention basically. But now you just put things out, and if you're any good and you have the stamina to continue, then people will start taking notice.
Stamina, determination, patience.
Patience, and you have to enjoy it. You have to think it's a lot of fun. I wasn't laughing all the way through writing the monster book, the bestiary, because writing 65 monsters in 2 months is a lot of work. But there are glimpses. So that when I could do the mummy and when I could do the vampire, for example, I love writing undead creatures, because they are sort of like they're not bound by natural laws or anything. You can just do whatever.
I love that vampire. It's one of my favorites.
It looks really great.
He's about to cause some real trouble.
Yeah.
As vampires ought to do.
True.
He's so feral.
Vampires are misunderstood, I think, but yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, Greg.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, guys, do you have any more questions for these two fine gentlemen?
We have to schedule another sit down.
I'm more than happy to schedule another sit down with you guys. It's been very, very fun, talking shop and tossing ideas back and forth.
We are working on we'll be having Thomas will be back on. We're actually working on getting a Thomas and Matthias duo stream.
Cool.
So yeah, hey, keep up with us. We're glad to have you guys back on for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, do you have any questions for him?
I guess this one's for Dave, because very recently now I've gotten like a tablet and a little stylus, I've been looking up like art tutorials. I'm like very, very beginner level. Only haven't done a few sketches so far, but like from because like I guess the question is like, what's like a good way to like motivate myself like at the start? Because obviously like because at the start, like I'm still learning a lot of things, and I'm dealing with a certain like frustration where like I try to draw something and it's just not coming out the way I imagine in my head. Like I think that's a thing that anyone who is like starting art has to deal with. But like, what's the best way you think to kind of push past that, and persevere, and keep going until
take the stuff that inspires you. Get the stuff that inspires you and copy it, reproduce it. Put it on a layer and trace it to learn what they're doing. I've got a teacher who said, trace things. He said, because when you do that, you're training yourself to do it the right way, especially if it's you'll start to understand what the artists that you like, that are inspiring you to create, what they're doing, like why you like it. He's like, oh, I see. This is how they handle this. You'll see how it's super informative way to come at it. Don't worry about, the biggest thing is like we always start thinking that like every picture has to be our masterpiece. It doesn't matter. Just keep doing stuff. Bring in a bunch of stuff that inspires you. Grab that, that orc, and just figure out what Niels Gulliksen was doing. How did he do that? I don't know. I look at the stuff. I was like, I love working with pen and ink, black and white as well. You can get some sort of lively ink brushes and just look at like Manola, how simple and direct and strong his stuff is. I'm so envious of Manola because it looks like so much fun, and also looks like it doesn't take nearly as much time as what I'm doing, although it probably does. It just looks like it would go quickly. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I did. Like I started off just redrawing Von Baudet. I copied Frazetta. Anything that I liked, I would try to figure out what they were doing, and that'll keep you engaged too, because those are your inspirations to begin with. Those are your motivations to get into it. And it's really just putting in time, just doing as much as you can, just every day, pull in something and put it right next to you, and then like draw it to the side. One thing that I would do, exercise I would often do, is I would when I was learning to do portraitures, I would put a picture of somebody I wanted to do a portrait of in a file, and then right next to it, I'd look at it and I'd start drawing it. And then when I was done, I'd overlay what I did onto the photo and check myself, like, what am I doing wrong? Where did I miss it? And then correct like that. But you'd be surprised at how quickly you get really good.
And even though
it just takes time. Yeah.
And I'm not an artist. It's like stick men are above my level. But one thing that I've noticed following some of the game artists that I really enjoy, Sam Manley, for example, who's illustrating a lot of Warren Van Roleplay stuff. He's very open about his journey. So he posts like, "This was me 15 years ago," and I'm like, "Wow, that's not very good." But he kept at it. He kept at it. He's just, okay, this is next thing. Don't give up. I would say, like I said, I tell people who write stuff as well, don't compare yourself to the masters. Try to find a level where you can aspire to. Don't try to write the next Dungeons and Dragons right away. I've been writing since '89, and what I'm mostly known for is that I've been writing since 1989. It's not well, of course, there are some adventures that people know more about, but and I think that's the same with art. Is you shouldn't get hung up on trying to produce the perfect piece of art. It's your body of work at the end that's, and if you enjoy doing that body of work, some of those things might become really, really good, but a lot of them will be okay, and some will be sort of like mediocre. And that's the same with writing. You have to look at it not as if you're writing one adventure for Dungeons and Dragons and then you're done. Well, you might do
Right.
that if you're inclined to do that. But if you want to stay at it, you just have to see it as a continual process of writing a monster and then something else and then something else and then something else. And it's like for Dave, it's like you have to draw something and then you have to draw something else and then you have to draw something else and then you have to keep doing that for a while.
For as long as you can.
Then
Yeah.
you grow as long as you can, and as long as you want to. If you don't want
Yeah.
to, you should stop. If you feel that it's a chore, then maybe you should stop. But if you enjoy it and if you want to improve, remember that it takes lots and lots of work. Like Dave says, just copying stuff. Don't claim it as yours, but copy stuff. And if you are so inclined, you can go back to the old AD&D adventure covers and even the illustrations in the rulebook. They traced a lot of Marvel stuff for their illustrations. You can see, okay, this is Doctor Strange. This is this person. This is this, because they took images from comics and just traced them and made them into their own stuff. I don't recommend doing that now. It was sort of like a more of a not even a gray zone. It was not really okay then, but then at least it was a really small cottage industry. But like learn by copying and develop your own
I mean,
style.
in art school, you do master copies. You know,
okay.
that's how you learn. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, but one of my favorite artists in the genre is Jeff Jones, who died about 10 years ago, I guess. And one thing that he said that I love, I use this a lot, but he said it's impossible to come away from a picture with less than you came to it with. You know, you can't lose anything by doing another picture. It might not be as what you were looking for. I was coming back from Croquis one night with a friend, and we stopped into a place to get something to eat. And the waitress, we were looking at, the illustrations we'd done, and the waitress came over. She said, "What is this? What are you guys looking at?" I said, "Oh, it's, we went to Croquis. We do sketching." He said, "Oh, that looks like fun." And it wasn't busy. She went over by the register and she started doing this sketch. And then she came over. She said, "I made this sketch, but I don't really like it very much." And I said, "Congratulations, you're an artist."
That's
Yeah.
funny.
But yeah, it's like you're just gonna keep going. There's no. My teacher would tell me there's no such thing as talent. There's just hard work. You just put in the time. People who have passion to put in the time get good. But this, it's like the guitar. Anytime you see somebody who's really, really good at playing the guitar, if you talk to them, they've always been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
They've said, "Yeah, I just started yesterday. I can just do it." It's like,
Yeah, if you always spend your time comparing yourself to others, and especially the great artists, and for sure, but if you always spend your time comparing yourself to others, that's definitely the path to frustration.
Yeah.
I've always looked at it as, if I'm going to compare myself to anybody, I'm going to compare myself to me yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's good. And but still, it's also a question of if you look at what you think the masters are doing when it comes to writing, for example. If you look at the structure of something, copy the structure. There's shortcuts you can make by copying stuff that isn't writing per se. It's more like information structure, and there's no copyright on that. And if you see a good adventure that you can learn a lot from that. And for me, that was how I broke into game writing, was that I sort of like, well, I think the adventures are stupidly laid out. I think they should do this and this and this and this. So I put together my own formula, and that turned out to be, since I wrote for conventions, I had to communicate to the game masters. I used to have, when we did Cyberpunk, I used to have about 20-30 game masters at each con, 4 or 5 times a year in Sweden, which was a huge thing. And they had to understand the adventure. So I had to learn how to write stuff that people understood and could run at the drop of a hat, because they would be given the adventure when they came to the convention, and then they would run it a couple hours later. So it had to be really immediate, and it had to be like interesting to read and sort of structured in a way that the game masters could use it. And if you see something like that, copy that, and then add your own sensibilities, your own ideas, your own atmosphere, your own story to it, like that.
Oh, that answers my question.
Great advice.
Yeah, that's a much
my
longer
question.
answer than I was expecting, but thank you both for that.
Yeah, no, I was literally going to
Well,
ask you that, Magnus. You know, because again, you know, writing is definitely, if I had to rank my skills, it's definitely down there with art. Like you, stick figures are about as good as I can get. But I as a writer,
Keith Haring built a career on drawing stick people.
Okay.
Good point.
Oh, yeah,
So,
he did.
Good point.
Yeah, it's all about your passion, you know.
Yeah.
It's all about what did Julia Child call it? The courage of your convictions. You have to have it. She was talking about flipping omelets, but you have to have the courage of your convictions.
It's true. True. Yeah, and writing is definitely something a skill I've wanted to improve. You know, along with you know my love of designing systems and mechanics and stuff like that. So I'm definitely gonna take that to heart. But with that said, unless we have any other questions, I think we can call this episode done. First of all, I would like to thank the both of you for coming on, taking the time out of your busy days. And I know it's it's evening over there in Stockholm. But thank you guys for coming on and sharing your wisdom, sharing your
quite dark yet.
Your work. It's still kind of light. Your work, and thank you for first of all, thank you for staying with it, because at any point in time, either of you could have just said, you know what, this ain't for me, but you stuck with it and you've produced fantastic things. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I'm doubly pleased. I'm pleased to be working with this group of people, and I'm pleased that people who buy the product and care about it are really happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's been great to hear.
Yeah. For me, this is I do this part-time freelancing, and I do it because I love it, not because I want to become sort of rich and cash in on anything. It's so much fun being a part of a community of creators that we have here in Sweden, at least. And people are helping each other out, and we meet at conventions, and we talk about stuff, and we have so many talented game designers and game producers here in Sweden that you could do an episode just about listing them. There's so much brilliant stuff coming out of Sweden that it's amazing. And not only from Free League, there are actually other companies as well.
Yeah. We've been working with Free League, basically just representing their games, stuff like that, for over a year now, and Free League has been fantastic for us. They're a fantastic company to work with, great products, and obviously some really awesome, spectacular people that they work with in the creation of those products. And it has been an honor for us to not only have that relationship with Free League, but to be able to establish connections and relationships with all of you, the creators that are involved in these products. One really big thing, we do what we do now for two reasons. The streaming piece to it is about building our brand as a personal brand. But it's also something that we decided early on. We try to limit how much it's commercialized, so that we're bringing some value to our audience, to the people who want to absorb our content, in making sure that we're getting people that are engaged and involved in the industry, not just anybody on the show to talk and share their experience. And to kind of round that out, it starts out to be really for the people, for the audience, so that we have content that they want to absorb and that can help them. But it also helps us as a group that's out there working on product and grinding away to create some of this new content. Really having the opportunity to sit down with you guys, which are whether you do it part-time or full-time or whatever it is, you're veterans in the industry. You've been around doing this for a long time, and you've been involved in some really, really great stuff.
Thank you. Just a comment to that is that I can't speak for Dave, of course, but when you say that, I feel, of course, I'm honored, and I think I'm honored to be asked to be talk to you guys, but I'm just a gamer, and I think that it's important also for the people watching this is that I'm just a gamer. I happen to write stuff as well, but what I do is not unattainable for anyone else. It's not. It's put your mind to it and get down to it and work and write and put things out. Then you can do it as well. I don't have a skill set as a game writer that not many other gamers have that same skill set. But just do it. Just get down and do it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Just get to work. It's in again, like Greg said earlier, compare yourself to you yesterday. And I know these are all truisms, these are all cliches, but it's they're used so often and they stand the test of time because they're true. Just sit down and do the work.
I firmly believe that you can do anything that you want. If you put your mind to it. And there's nothing stopping you. It's just you might have to put your back into it. But all the resources are out there for everybody these days. There's none of the hurdles that we had when we were young, or not hurdles, but the challenges, you could say. But it's all out there for everybody. I would like to talk about the Smart School. It's online. The Muddy Colors blog set it up. It was Rebecca Gay, Greg Manchess, a bunch of artists like that who they started doing this illustration masterclass 1 week out of the year in the beginning of the summer, where everyone would come from all over and just spend a week painting, and like Boris Vallejo would be there and Julie Bell, just the chance to sit by the fire of the giants. And then they started an online version of it, which has been really popular, called Smart School, which I partook of because is that a word, past tense? Partook. Anyway, I signed up.
I think so.
And it is now.
It is now. I partook in.
As a native English speaker, I think.
Yeah. It's a perfectly cromulent word, but they offer mentorships. They're not cheap, but they're amazing. So I mentored, I think, 4 terms with Greg Manchess, and it was just, unbelievable what that did for me. It was, to me, that's my true art education, was going through that school. They deal with a lot of stuff like composition as story, things like that, focusing on all this stuff. But if you want to do magic cards, they'll teach you how to do that too. But everybody has something to teach there, and they're amazing. So, if anybody wants to learn to do this kind of artwork, no matter what style, check them out. It's an investment, but it's invaluable. They're like people at the top of the genre.
Dave, is that Smarter Art School? Is that the thing? Because I found something which this is the URL I found. Smarter Art School. It looks like that, but
yes, cool. Yes, okay. Yeah, that's the.
If you that's it. pass that over to me in the Discord, and I'll pop it in the chat in case anybody wants to check that out.
I put it in the stream chat now.
Yeah, okay. you gotta pass it. You gotta pass it.
If you automatically kind of
There's also the option, if you don't if you can't afford to do a full mentorship, you can monitor classes, which is usually just as informative, but everyone else is doing the work. You can sort of follow along and listen in, and there's a chat there that you can sort of interact in the chat. But
Nice.
but it's just
Really
just unbelievable. It's the culmination of the workshops I was trying to put together. They've managed to do it online, and it's great. It's great. It put me where I am, So hopefully it could help somebody else. No,
Yeah.
but that's it, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Really. Thank you. I'm gonna click that link because that looks like. Oh, yeah.
Cool thing.
Awesome stuff.
Save
Okay,
this.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm just there we go. I'm gonna save that. That way I don't forget for later because I always forget stuff. But yeah, thank you guys again for coming in. It was a pleasure. It was an honor. And this, guys, is the end of our special guest episode with Dave Brasgalla and Magnus Setter, who were two of the artist and writer on Dragon's Bane Bestiary. I highly recommend you guys check out the Dragon's Bane game, the Bestiary, and Free League Press as a whole. They put out absolutely phenomenal work, and I don't see them stopping anytime soon. So you guys have a good evening, Dave, Magnus, and the rest of you guys have the rest of your good day.
Dave, Magnus,
Thanks so much.
Now that you guys are part of our Discord community, hang out in there. It's also a quick and easy way for us to communicate with each other if you want to do any collaboration or anything in the future, or when you have a new project coming out, let us know because we would be glad to have you on and talk about it.
Yeah, we should talk more about Lovecraft. Eldritch, the Eldritch.
Hey, that's. I mean, we told you we're building something right now, so I mean, go for it. We're
and thanks everybody who was who was watching and in the chat and just following along.
Yep. Yeah. So you guys have a good one. Yeah, it's gonna be an episode. Greg, are you ready to close this out?
I am, because I'm just gonna hit end, and we're done.
Adios, guys.
Wow.
The end.
Thanks,
Good night, everybody.